and welcome to our Think Tank event for IT Leaders Insights. I will be your host today, Casey Brandt, and your moderator for this session is Ed Colopy. So for the agenda today, I have a few quick things to go through before we get started. So for some housekeeping, the replay will be made available on Conexxus365.org. So you'll make sure to go there if you want to watch it after the fact. You can send questions directly through the GoToWebinar interface. So please feel free to do that as soon as the question comes to you. The earlier you get it in, the earlier you'll be in the session to answer it. PCI credits are available for qualifying live events, so please contact us if you're interested in that. So this is a disclaimer that slide our lawyers make us put in. The views and opinions are solely of the speakers and not Conexxus itself. A big thank you to our 2022 annual Diamond sponsors at Conexxus. The extra support is really appreciated and allows us to continue the work that we do on behalf of the industry. So Conexxus is a nonprofit technology organization. Our members really do the heavy lifting. So we provide a neutral forum where retailers and vendors can network and come together to create standards and solutions that are beneficial to our industry. We also educate through white papers and events like this one at Conexxus365, and we advocate on a technical level at other organizations to help steer the conversation around standards and policies so that changes don't negatively affect your business. So at Conexxus365, we are an education subscription series. We've got some great webinars coming up with Bounteous, Persist Solutions, and so much more, so be on the lookout for those. You can make sure to contact us on LinkedIn, Conexxus.org, or the Conexxus365 website. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Ed so that way you can introduce our presenters.
Well, thanks, Casey, and welcome, everybody. It's great to be with you. Today, we have a great opportunity to hear what's on the minds of IT leaders from some of the smaller companies in the industry. In our Think Tank version 6.0 discussion, you'll be informed, involved, reminder, send your questions in throughout the discussion this afternoon, and move on with some impactful things to consider and take action on. I'm happy to introduce our panelists, who I know will make this an insightful conversation. First, Lonnie McWhirter. He's a single store operator of the 36 Lynn Refuel Station in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is a community-focused refueling station that proudly carries locally made goods. Lonnie is also a member of the NACS Board of Directors. Skip Potter is the Director of Technology at RL Valley, operating over 40 Maplefield stores in Vermont. The company also distributes gasoline and diesel fuel throughout Vermont, New Hampshire, and New York. And in 2019, Skip was recognized as a futurist on CSP's Power 20 list. And last but not least, Mark Holloway is the Chief Information Officer at Hammer Williams, a diverse business that operates over 20 Jiffy Trip stores throughout Oklahoma. Mark serves on the Conexxus Board of Directors and has chaired Conexxus's food service working group along the way. We've really got a powerful panel. Thanks, guys, for joining in. Let's get started. Lonnie?
Thank you, Ed. Great to follow up after Casey's presentation. Today, I want to talk about some of the importance of building company culture around technology, and one very conducive toward a very productive environment as we're embracing the advancement of these tools that we use in our operations, whether we be a small operator like myself or some of the larger ones like Skip and Mark. Now, one of the things I want to talk about at the outset is this concept of strategic and non-strategic costs there. So in typical day-to-day convenience store operations, we're always looking to minimize our expenses, right? The business model is such where we have really high overhead and it takes a lot to kind of get over that hurdle. And so we're constantly looking and drilling through our P&Ls to figure out what other expenses are optional and which ones maybe we can toss out. But as it pertains to technology, this whole idea is, we want to look at technology as possibly being a strategic cost or investment that we make, as opposed to the non-strategic cost. So Figure non-strategic costs being, possibly in my operations, what we outlay for paper towels, employee uniforms, or at times wasteful spending on items that are nice to have. They're fun, but they really don't add much to the bottom line or enhance our customer experience. Now, looking at strategic costs and how that pertains to specifically retail, we think about things like loyalty programs that are well executed, that are really set out from the beginning with the end in mind. Not necessarily how do we give out, cup of coffee and how do we get customers necessarily happy about it, but also conversely, what insights can we glean from the data, from the new data we're receiving from transactional information, as well as repeat customers and other metrics that we can pull for our own operations and our own internal KPIs. Now, that being said, looking at tools, I do want to stress this, looking at technology, and as I walked through the NAC show floor a couple weeks ago, I kind of look at it the same way that, I do in terms of software tools. And there's two types of people and two different camps. There's those people that are pretty good at Excel and are masters of it, and those that keep claiming that it's dead, that it's gone, right? And what I mean by that is that, some very basic tools get the job done just like everything else. Like a hammer, Excel is very diverse and very comprehensive. And if you have enough time and enough skill, you can get the job done with it. That being said, there are amazing tools and amazing technologists that can be seen at the NAC show and different Conexxus events that really help us to think critically about our own internal operations and really challenge us to kind of improve the customer experience and make it maybe easier on our team members and our organizations as well. A couple of the things I'd like to bring up of why it's important to have really solid company culture to embrace technology is you really want to make sure that they're ready and prepared, your team that is, and your vendor partners, so that one, communication's clear and that they know that there's an open door for back and forth, because again, we don't have the luxury of being a startup and kind of working on it as we go and have a launch date down the road. We are literally performing surgery on a live body, right? So our day-to-day operations, our businesses, we're not halting them. In fact, we've probably got one of the few industries that has to operate on a 24/7 basis. So that being said, we do need to be careful, one, about the technologies we apply, and two, that we have that open communication and dialogue so that as we're embracing these tools, that our teams are ready to leap into action to deal with whatever bumps and hiccups come along the road. Now, those are just a few aspects that I wanted to cover, but I did want to leave some time to see who else had some questions or some input.
Lonnie, you talked about strategic investments. Can you just maybe tell our audience about a couple of the more strategic ones that have made a difference to you that you've made so far on the technology front?
That's a great question. I thank you for that one. About 9 years ago, we began the vetting process of looking at at the time, a new technology that we were trying to figure out if it worked in our space. And it was what we would later purchase and install, known as a DC fast charger or a level 3 fast charger. It's not per se a new technology. There was in the marketplace, there was level 1 and level 2 chargers in that space. But really with the level 3, it made a little bit more sense for the convenience gas station channel, because it was able to save our customers time there. And, rather it be just something new and nice and shiny, but you're stuck there for 6 hours trying to get 80% charge. This was a viable solution because, a 15-minute charge could be viable for the consumer that only spends about a few moments in our stores.
So Lonnie, you talk about being a single store operator and trying to maintain 24/7 uptime. How do you work? I realize you don't have a lab and you don't have a lower volume store to test that's less risk. So how do you go about weaving the needle and keeping your store up and deciding what technology is ready and what technology isn't?
It's a great question, Mark. Thank you for that one. Again, going back to the strategic versus non-strategic costs, over time in different industries, you kind of learn which ones are strategic and which ones are non. And, for instance, with us, when it comes to our point of sale patches and updates, we tend to be a laggard in that space. Just because through experience, there's been a lot of painful trials and tribulations when we've been the first one out of the gate getting that new patch installed, right? And then it patches one problem, one issue that's going on, and then 5 others kind of spring up on us. It's been through a lot of pain and sometimes absolute frustration where I've wanted to not only break the equipment we've had on site, but I'm not sure if I want to cry or laugh, but judging by the expressions on the fellow speakers' faces, we've all been down that road. So I know that I'm not alone in that sentiment there.
Lonnie, I just had one a follow-up question for you, and that is that if you were to implement some type of a frictionless payment or a self-checkout mode at one of your locations, what would be kind of one of the key takeaways that you would focus on to look at that in a single store operation?
Getting back to, there's going to be some things we try that we absolutely fall on our face on and fail with, and other things where you really are, it's this constant tension between looking at both sides of the counter, right? The staff that work for us that are really doing their best to do a great job and always embracing customers. But on the opposite end of things there, what are our consumers' new demands and what are they experiencing throughout their customer journeys, not just within our businesses and our industry, but when they go out and perform other shopping or when they're just experiencing life, how are they embracing tools there? And does it make the most sense? I think so many times people look at technology like it's anti-human, right? Or that it's apart from us, when really from the people that code it and produce and test the machines, they're all human. And really, I think some of the best applied technologies are one where it's almost, you kind of take it for granted at times, right? Again, I kind of look back at, some of the online spaces which host a lot of, videos and movies. And, sometimes people look at it as it like death of the TV, but I can say for myself, it's really helped myself and my organization in terms of employee training to deal with customers in tough situations. But also when we look at maybe the more technical, nuanced aspects of what we do here, a video goes an awful lot further than, handing someone a manual and having them go through the pain and agony sometimes of getting through the technical writing, which can be very, it's great reading when you need a sleep aid, let's put it like that. So.
Well, thanks, Lonnie. Skip, did you have another follow-up to that, or?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, good. And I think Lonnie's comment on both sides of the counter and looking at that as an element of how to evaluate what's good for the customer and what's great for the employee is important. And I think, Skip, you'll have a point of view on that.
I do. Thank you, Ed. And Lonnie, thank you. That was a great segue going into what I wanted to talk on today, and that is kind of embracing technology in the convenience store industry. So as you said, you've got a lot of challenges, whether you be a single store or a multi-store operator. So I'd like to just kind of start with a statement, which basically is that technology does come at a cost. There's no question. However, so does fatigue to our managers, and so does fatigue to our cashiers and our frontline staff. So my scenario is your manager comes in on a Monday morning after being off over the weekend. But that weekend wasn't really without any incident. He probably got a phone call over the weekend. But here he is on Monday morning. He's coming in, she's coming in, and they're about to do their business. And their phone rings. And now the phone rings and they've got somebody that's not coming in because I'm sick. And then they go about figuring, okay, now I'm going to scramble to get this going. And then somebody doesn't show up. They have a no-show. but you still have a business to operate. You still have coffee to make. You have pastries that need to be done. You have all of these things that need to take place at that store level. And you have a manager that's already stressed on a Monday morning saying, how am I going to do this? I am one person, right? How can I make our customers happy? And how can I keep business flowing through the door and keep everything going? And that creates a real stress for our staff. We take years to gain customers coming through the door, and that stick-to-itiveness and those coming back, right? And wanting to join us in the brand that we're offering. It only takes a second. Only takes a second and a bad experience for that customer to walk away. And we feel that pain and we feel the anguish of losing that customer, and really kind of sometimes not even in our own control, because we don't have warm bodies coming through the door every day, knocking and dropping applications in. The employee pool is limited, and it's very difficult to run convenience stores or any industry at that point. We, as a company, really kind of took advantage of COVID. And the way I'll kind of clarify that statement by saying that when COVID hit, we had a lot of plexiglass going up and no touch points and, no pens and no signatures and all of that. And the first thing we did was we took all of our cashier facing scanners and we turned them around to face the customers. And we asked the customers to scan their own product. And when they started scanning their own product, they appreciated the fact that we no longer were touching their product. It was basically one less touch point that they needed to deal with. And that was our aha moment. That really was the time when we realized we're doing this wrong for us. We need to look at how can we embrace technology and give the customer an experience that they can own, that they can come in. If they're a road warrior, they can come in, they can come out, they can go get their coffee, and they can be out the door. And oh, by the way, they don't have to talk to anybody if they don't want to. They can pay for that transaction, right? So we started looking at our locations and we started watching traffic patterns and how people came in the store and which traffic flow did they go? Did they go left or right? We paid attention to how they came up to the transaction counter. Were they putting their product left to right? Were they bagging their product? Were they not bagging their product? Were they reading signs, not reading signs? And I say all these things because those are all key things that need to be thought about when you're thinking about embracing technology in your location. Signage, keeping it simple but precise, making sure that it's clear, people know what they're supposed to do. One of the biggest things that I would like to say is homework, homework, homework. Build a relationship with a partner, a channel partner. Ask a lot of questions, right? Because as I said, technology comes at an expense. But when you can put that technology into a store and you can run your store with a bunch of call outs and with one manager in the store, everybody's happier, right? Because now you have an autonomous transaction or semi-autonomous transaction that can continue to happen even with less staff in your store, right? So having the technology to make that happen is really paramount in being able to build those transactions where you can have less interaction, and it allows your staffing to be able to reallocate hours to making more coffee, cleaning the restrooms, making the pastry bar look good, right? All of those things. But some of the things that I would also consider if you're thinking about embracing technology is how can you use the technology you currently have? Can you repurpose the hardware that you have? Can you turn it into something else? Can you face it to the cashier? Can you change your scanner layouts? How can you use the technology you have, implementing maybe some new technology, but at the end of the day, ensuring that your business is going to continue when that warm body doesn't show up? And that's really important. We started doing that, and we are fully embracing, self-checkout in the convenience store industry. And I said in 2019 that this was kind of the roadmap of the technology for the convenience store industry, that our landscape of what convenience looks like to us now is not going to be anything like it looks in 5 years from now. Our convenience store industry is changing dramatically. And I would challenge every one of the people that watch this video or own or operate a location to look at your locations, look at how you can embrace that technology, and obviously make sure that it's the right fit for you. The key thing is make sure you know your channel partner. Make sure you're comfortable with the person that you want to work with. We are aggressively putting self-checkout in. We as a company have chosen to do all of our transactions all through through express lane checkouts for our entire company. So I am actively rolling out even through the end of the year. We're putting new sites in almost every 2 weeks until the end of the year, and then moving into the beginning of 2023. So for us, it's a very important part of what we do in our daily business operations. And to Mark's point, bringing up the lab, if you have a lab scenario, if you're in a situation where you can test it and vet it out in a lab scenario, that would be ideal, right? Because Lonnie, I watched your pain as you were talking about patches and getting in the leading industry and putting patches in and fixing one thing and 5 more break. We've all been there, right? But I guess I'm a glutton for punishment because I do field trial with software, and I do beta testing for software, and I put ourselves in that situation. So at the end of the day, technology can really help mainstream your daily operations. And I will just leave this one point. Our district managers are constantly calling me and saying, when are you going to do my store? Because I need it. I need this technology, right? And I have managers that have spoken to our CEO and said, the only reason your store is open today is because of self-checkout, because I'm the only one here and I'm still running the store. So I'll leave you with that. Technology will absolutely, if embraced correctly and utilized and implemented correctly, can make your life a whole lot easier in this industry.
Thanks, Skip. That's great information. What kind of adoption rate are you seeing with the customers for self-checkout, and what are you doing to increase that adoption beyond rolling more out?
Mark, that's a really great question. Our adoption rate is 100% because we have self-checkout facing the customers. So we either have 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 transaction areas, and we expect all transactions to go through that express lane self-checkout program. Now, we also have the ability of helping a customer, right? So we could either go around and walk them through hand-holding that process, or if we have somebody that pushes back, we will just run that transaction as a traditional transaction. We'll scan your product, we'll take your money, and those type of things. But at the end of the day, it's really 100% going through the express lane.
Do you restrict any products like age restricted or EBT?
Another great question, Mark. Yes, we do. We as self-checkout, customers come up with wine or beer products or age-restricted products. They can scan that product, and then obviously that does require an interaction with our associates, right, to approve the proper steps to approve that transaction. But our technology that we use basically is a kind of a stopgap. You scan your product, but when you hit that age-restricted beer, it stops, and nothing else can happen until that age restriction is approved by the cashier. And keep in mind that cashier probably isn't standing behind the transaction counter. They may be over making coffee. But prior to having express checkouts, they were standing behind the counter and the coffee bar was empty, right? So now you've got fresh coffee and you have a customer that can buy their product. If they wanted tobacco or a non-smokeless product or something of that nature, then obviously that would be an interaction. I need to grab a pack of Marlboros. We do the age verification. We hand it to the customer. We also push that transaction back to the express lane so that they have to run that whole transaction. So the cashier is kind of helping the customer, but the customer is completing the transaction.
Skip, you mentioned a roadmap. And at the NAC show, the Conexxus Innovation Research Committee presented a roadmap as well. And I just wonder if there's one or two things that are on your roadmap at Maple Fields that will take you beyond the self-checkout operation that you've deployed.
Yeah, it's a great question, Ed. Thank you. Obviously, automation technology for us is important. The more technology we can use to automate a process, the better. Frictionless payment, looking at AI technologies, looking at the ability of not really even having a cashier required, looking at new technologies such as an Amazon Go or smart shelves or AI technology with camera systems. We're always looking at new technology and new ways to innovate the convenience store industry. And then also for our roadmap for us is EV technology. So we are actively embracing EV technology, and that probably will be a larger focus in the next 2 years. And then automation of our back office systems, automation of how data flows, automation of less interaction with the customer having to, or the associates having to pull reports, having all of that type of thing automated so that everything kind of flows through the system, because the less touch points you have, the more efficiency, and the more efficiency, the better experience that customer is going to have. And really at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is the customer's experience.
Thanks, Skip. Mark, why don't you take us into your world at Jiffy Trip and your thoughts on what's happening there on the technology front?
Sure. Thanks, Ed. I have to start back a little ways because, it's kind of been an evolution for our commitment to innovation. It started in 2006 with the day we started scanning product in and out of our stores. That day was the single most profitable day in our 50-year history. Since then, we have continually improved ourselves through the use and embracement of technology to ensure accuracy, tracking, and reporting. We've done a pretty good job, and today our stores are bigger, better, and competing with more than just gas stations. We outperform a lot of restaurants. Who'd have thought that was possible 10 years ago? We need to do more than track money in the till, control shrink, and what products are selling. That's what we've done for a long time, and it's worked, but times are changing. We've gotten really good at failing fast, but how can we fail less? How do we predict an outcome before we fail? How can we move our prices and margins around so that the customer sees us as a better value than the dollar store down the street? We're giving them better stores, but how can we make their experience better? Well, we're evolving again. We're constantly evolving. We figured out that we, as humans, can only base our decisions and successes on experience. Inherently, we learn slowly, and it takes a lot of experiences to change our mind. We collect data, a lot of data. Do we do anything with it? Sure. We've made reports. We've made, as Lonnie said, spreadsheets, and someone is always looking at them and trying their best to make changes for the better. But change is coming way too slow for our customers. The acceleration of change comes from them, and their expectations change daily. Our ability to keep up and exceed those expectations will determine our ability to be competitive tomorrow, next week, or even next year. We want to make sure the products in our stores are what the customer wants, are priced at a point that is within reason and competitive in their perception, and we're beginning the process of engaging solution providers with systems that can mine our data, help us get more data than we currently do, and use machine learning and AI to not just steer our offering, but also our customers. Maybe you don't have the budget, or maybe you're not sure you'll get actionable data out of the spend. There are options such as Nielsen IQ that was recently a NACS webinar that's very affordable to get your feet wet. Yes, they sell your data, but in exchange, they're going to give you some pretty impressive tools to make decisions with. And any forward motion is motion. It's important to us that our solution provider understands that this is our data. And if we come up with a need for our data as it is in their systems, we want to be able to get to it. We want to maximize our margins. Sorry. We don't have the resources to build these systems, but that doesn't mean we won't next year. Any provider we use must recognize that if they are going to monetize our data, we have to know about it and possibly share the profit. Free is never free. Nothing is ever easy, but we are committed. We want to maximize our margins on an item-by-item basis. We do need to be sure we have some guardrails in place so we don't accidentally have a Snickers bar selling for $20 when they're clearing the shelves and the manufacturer's out of product. But we do want that margin to be as good as it can be within acceptable limits. CPU cycles will always spot trends and movement faster than a human will. We want our vendors to know how much we're both losing when we're out of product. And we want that vendor to know we're out of product. We want to make sure we're utilizing our labor efficiently. We want to make sure our facilities are running as well as they can and maintenance is done proactively rather than reactively. Who wants a support ticket coming in at 5 p.m. on a Saturday that a cold vault is 60 degrees when a sensor and an algorithm could have predicted and addressed that ahead of time? That may be the best example I can give today. We know we cannot sell beer at 60 degrees. So how do we fix it? Well, what we did is the first thing we did is we put thermometers in the coolers. Sometimes people looked at them, sometimes they didn't. So we went a little further and we had the temperature tracked and documented. Well, that got it a little better. So then we changed out the thermometers for sensors that would send the temperatures to the cloud and have applications above the site reading these temperatures and alerting someone if the temperature gets too warm. Each step in this evolution has brought us closer to making sure the customer can depend on us to have cold beer. But is that as good as it can get? No. Every step so far has still been reactive and still resulted in having 60-degree beer. So what's next? Let's put sensors on the compressors and doors, and let's plug that data into a learning platform that can establish a baseline for optimal energy usage over time. Let it alert us when a compressor is showing signs of fatigue so that we can get it repaired before the cooler is 60 degrees. It's a lot more cost effective to schedule those truck rolls during the week than it is on a weekend after a failure, and the customer can really count on that cold beer. Let's talk a minute about self-closers on the vault doors. Maybe one or two of them has stopped closing all the way, and the compressor is having you run a lot longer to keep the cooler chilled. How long might it be before someone notices that and asks for it to be fixed? How many times might they close it before they think about getting it fixed? Door sensors and machine learning can take care of that for you. That's what digital transformation is all about. Taking mundane tasks that can be automated and removing those tasks from humans. Is it cheap? No. Is it free? Well, sometimes, but Mostly no. But how much was your last electric bill? How much was your last after hours repair bill? If you didn't call the repair out after hours, how many sales did you lose? How much waste did you throw away when the temperature got too hot? Does it pay for itself? Absolutely. Today, we're working with vendors in 3 areas for advanced analytics: retail marketing, operations, and facilities. All 3 of these are imperative to our success. Our next phase will be aggregating these 3 disjointed pillars into a single view that we can roll down to the site. Ultimately, our teams at site level are the key to our success. Let's put processes in place that help their stores run the best they can, so those teams can do what they do best and focus on the customer.
Thank you, Mark. I got a quick question for you in regards to that. I see, you mentioned since 2006 is when you guys started scanning products and whatnot, but, really, was it organic, or was it just kind of an aha moment when you guys were able to take the new black gold, right, which is data, right, and convert that into usable information? And how were you able to work with your team as well to kind of help them trust and lean on that data that information to make decisions in your organization?
We failed more than once at building a price book. And so that day did not come without pain and did not come easily. 3 times we made a run at building a scannable price book, and we did not have a wholesaler in place that was prepared for it. We did not have a back office system that was helping us in a way that could make it happen. And we didn't have registers. We had Tech MA290s in our stores. I don't know, you're probably not old enough to remember those, but it's PLU1, $2, PLU3. And you can do a lot with that spreadsheet and a pencil, but ultimately, when you start scanning items in and out of the store, you really start seeing what your margins are on a lot faster basis. And it's not 3 months before you close a month's books. You get to see the shrink, and the best I can do when they moved tobacco to behind the counter, before that, everybody in the store would tell you the customers are stealing our tobacco. The customers are stealing our tobacco. And they, lo and behold, legally you have to move it behind the counter. And guess what? The shrink didn't go away. You start scanning that product and start watching and realize that, hey, I have access to till movement. And you start realizing, well, the product's not going away. It's converting to cash. And as you spot trends like that, you start realizing that data is what's making it available to you. And it has truly been an evolution. And you can run. That's how companies excelled in the past, was operating better than other stores. And the controls you put in place lets you do that. And that's still true today. But the generations of shoppers that are coming in today aren't just about, I always buy a Snickers bar. They're about that plush toy they saw somebody playing with on TikTok. And I want one of those. It's immediate gratification, and I'm not going to want that tomorrow. You've got to be prepared to run your business with some short life products, and the staples are still there, but the number of staples are shrinking, and you've got to be agile, and the only way you're going to be agile is to be able to react faster.
Hey, Mark, it sounds like you've taken some of Skip's advice on working with the channel partner to help you with the next level of data analytics. Can you just comment on being a small operator and the importance of finding the right partner to help you with initiatives like that?
It absolutely is. You know, you start with a list of wants or expectations, and you find a provider that can meet that and more. And you know, because as a smaller operator, you don't always know what you don't know, and you're doing the best you can just to stay afloat. And pairing yourself with somebody that has more ability than you're prepared for will elevate your business. And finding the right one is essential.
Mark, I just had one quick follow-up on that too. So you basically, in your analytics, you talk about retail operations, facility, and operations in general, right? So all that data is great data, but how do you balance manpower between the analytics that you're getting? Like, you get a lot of data, but how do you balance the manpower of what you're looking at? You know, it's a lot of data to look at and absorb, but how do you do that with manpower limitations?
Well, again, over time, you know, you develop the reports for somebody to look at, but somebody always has to look at them. And that's where we're moving going forward, is trying to get somebody out of the seat looking at every report and saying, okay, what's normal, and you know, what is not normal, and letting a machine figure out, okay, this is normal. These are not normal. Somebody look at those. And the amount of time somebody's sitting in that seat trying to figure those out is a lot less, and they can spend the rest of their time making the business better. Humans do a really good job of coming up with crazy ideas. I come up with crazy ideas every day. Well, and computers not necessarily, but computers do see operational norms, and you know, they see a till opening, and they can see money going in and out, and they can see things getting scanned and money not necessarily matching what's going into the till. All of that is possible electronically. And you know, storage is cheap. CPU cycles is getting cheaper, especially, you know, when it doesn't necessarily have to be on-prem today. And that's where we're trying to move going forward, is trying to separate what humans do well and what machines can do better. And I think that's going to be a key player.
Thank you all very much. Skip, Lonnie, Mark, for all of your insights that you shared with our audience today. And, you know, really appreciate your thoughtfulness in terms of where you're taking your companies on the technology front. I think it really demonstrates that there are challenges for small store operators, but also the capabilities that you guys have brought to the table. I think it's just proof that even for small operators, technology is an important element of a successful business. So thanks for being with us. And don't forget, questions and answers, put them in the chat. We'll be happy to respond to you. So I think we have some time for those questions that have come in. A couple of them have come in, and I'd encourage everybody to continue to send questions along so we can have a discussion together. This is your meeting as well. So Lonnie, not Lonnie, I'm sorry, Skip. You mentioned Amazon Go, and part of the challenge for smaller size stores, one of the audience members mentioned, could be putting in the turnstiles that you have to come in and you have to exit from in terms of taking up space. That, along with the camera sensors that go in the shelf units. So how have you guys thought about moving from the self-checkout environment you have to a more autonomous environment where you may have turnstiles and cameras?
Thank you, Ed. That's a great question from the audience member. Well, let me first of all say that there's always going to be a human interaction. I realize that Amazon Go has all these things, stanchions and gates and all that. I'm not necessarily saying that we would adapt that type of implementation, but we are always looking at new implementation of being able to mainstream a transaction, right? So instead of somebody having to come up to the transaction counter between AI technology, cameras, smart shelves, those type of things, maybe we could automate that process even more with a mobile wallet that between the cameras and the smart shelves, when a product is picked up off that shelf, it automatically flows to their wallet, right? So, and then when they leave the premises of the building, that whole transaction would then go right to their wallet, and that transaction would be basically totaled out. I don't ever see ourselves in the convenience store industry, in my world, ever making it so that there's not some form of human interaction. I believe we need to have that in this industry. I don't think that could be in my mind, I don't think that that's something that we would ever, take out of the public's grasp. And that's people are what keep our businesses running, right? So we still want to have that hands-on approach. So when I said Amazon Go, basically I use that more as an analogy of autonomous transactions, true autonomous transactions.
Thanks, Skip. All of you talked about, another question was, you all talked about customer expectations and responding to the customer. So the question is how do you, each of you, listen to the customers? Have you used any technologies to help you listen to the customer or hear the voice of the customer? Mark, you want to start off?
I can certainly try. We're still pretty early into that process. We've got a brand marketing director who is doing a great job with social media and engagement. But we've got a long ways to go to really tweaking and knowing, getting that real-time feedback as to the customer's feelings and what their drives are. I think that's got a lot of room for improvement where we sit. There, some of the larger companies, Casey's and Circle K, have really made huge strides into that area. And I look for additional technology to come online in the next 18 months, 24 months that'll help companies our size engage a lot more tightly.
Lonnie, you've got one store. I would imagine a lot of your customers by name, but how do you still respond and listen to them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ed. Let me start off by saying, sometimes until we drill into the data, we know our customers in some ways, in other ways we don't. One of the takeaways I saw about a decade ago was that 80% of my customers don't live within the city that my store is located in, which was kind of a shock and surprise to me, but it begs another question of, what are we doing that's attracting people that don't live, in the city where my store is located at to stop here, right? What makes it so special? And that's, that's endless where, you can go with what is the answer to that, but really it's also humbling and it's a challenge too to kind of look at and say, do I actually know my customer and how much time am I spending trying to figure out what are they looking for and how can we improve that experience there? And again, sometimes you need to ask questions, other times you just need to sit there and just kind of watch how things operate and go look at your competitors. And again, not just in this industry, not just in the space. Sometimes it may be a coffee shop that's your big competitor. Sometimes it may be the office space where your customers are going to, or the warehouse where they're going to, which is a competitor. And so really just trying to keep an open mind and just kind of look at it like you're an intern every single day and it's your first day, right? And to take all your preconceived notions and set them aside and just start fresh and kind of look at the data from a fresh perspective, or maybe go for a walk or just turn it upside down and kind of look at it like, if I had to start over today, what would I be gleaming here? Not like, let me take my biases from being in the industry from 17.5 years, let me set that aside. If I'm taking it from a fresh perspective, what would I do different, and how would I approach this this issue or this challenge differently right now?
Great. Skip, how about at Maple Fields? Do you have any tools you use to listen to the customer, voice of the customer?
We actually don't have any tools other than our ears, and we do listen to our customers. You know, we, especially in the industry where we are doing the express lanes and the self-checkouts and the automation and that type of thing, you know, obviously customers feel like the human interaction in some regards is being lost, or an employee is going to be losing their job because you're putting automation in. You know, and so you got to be able to talk to those customers about that, and they are valid. You know, they're valid concerns to that customer, so therefore they're valid concerns to us. We also have an email set up that's posted at every one of our locations. When you walk in, contact us at rlvalley.com. We want to know the good and the bad, you know, and so we give that, and I assure you that every email is read and responded to. So to have any automation on listening to our customers, no, but we still take the old-fashioned approach of listening to the customers and being able to react to them and respond to them.
Super. Another question from one of our guests is, what guides your decision-making on where to focus your efforts? In the present comments, there's often a decision to be made if you should focus on technology that benefits the customer versus technology that improves operations. Lonnie, you talked a little bit about that. Just want to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that those are mutually exclusive. I see those are one and the same, right? I mean, anything we do that improves the customer experience, and again, I'm not saying like, let's look for the greatest customer satisfaction, because sometimes that can be misleading, right? But anything that improves the customer journey when they're in our place, improves our operations and improves our bottom line. And I mean that sincerely, because you know, sometimes you send out surveys, right? And people are, you know, I think in business right now, that tends to be one of the obsessions is, let's send out a survey, right? Let's ask the customer how they feel. But when you're sending out a survey that you're not paying them for, you're gonna get a skewed response, right? Or even if it's a survey that you do pay, you know, people to take, you're gonna get a skewed response there. Observations are difficult and it can be hard, and sometimes it means a tough decision with one department of your organization or another, but you need to have those tough discussions, right? And so again, I don't see those as mutually beneficial. Looking at technologies, the viable solutions for looking in retail have, you know, they transcend not only the accounting and technology departments, but also in store ops as well. And I mean, I just, I don't know if, you know, let's, you know, maybe drill that down a little bit more specific if there's one where you see that it seems to be on the outset that those are mutually exclusive, and I can answer a little bit more specific. But right now, I see those as one and the same.
Mark, do you put different weights to customer-related projects versus operational efficiency projects?
No, I completely agree with Lonnie on that. The two are not, exclusive. You know, you can many times you can calculate an ROI on operational technology, or you can project it, at least. Whether you realize it or not is an unknown until you do it. But you know, when it comes to technology to improve the customer experience, there's so much to do, and you'll see, you know, if you're sophisticated enough, you'll see the improvement through either an increased traffic or increased volume which will give you an ROI, but it's not as easy to track.
Yeah.
That customer journey is, if I have to give one weight over another, I would say the customer experience and the customer journey far outweighs anything I can do operationally. We have a lab in our corporate environment. We have a store that we consider a lab, and then we'll do test groups and kind of measure the results at each step in that process. And then you have to ask yourself, did it make it better? That's a hurdle that you absolutely have to make. And we have made choices in the past to roll on technology that was seamless to the customer and actually did a lot to improve the customer experience, but was absolutely painful in the back end reconciling. And you could see the pain in the accountant's area, or finance, trying to figure out how to reconcile everything. But those are the decisions you have to make. But the customer experience absolutely takes precedence over operations, unless it's something as menial as hey, let's put LED bulbs in there with a 35-day ROI. Those kind of decisions.
So on that line, the last question we'll have time for this afternoon, and if you have others, send them along and we'll get answers back to you. But Skip, why don't you chime in on this last one? It's again a prioritization question around compliance, and as compliance changes evolve, particularly with EMV. How do you balance adopting new technology against what the customer's needs are?
That's a complex question. EMV technology obviously has to take precedence because it is what is the backbone of our business, right? So, if we want to be EMV compliant and take contactless payments, and we want to do that, then we have to jump through the hoops that are put in front of us to do that. So that part is not really something that we can do anything about, right? But in doing EMV compliance with contactless payment, contactless being part of frictionless payment, they do kind of go hand in hand. So it is a fine balancing act. But obviously EMV compliance really kind of has to take precedence over an automated process to be able to keep yourself in line with EMV compliant in general.
Right. Mark or Lonnie, any?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in on there too. I mean, a great question, but
Yeah.
I'd like to draw a delineation, kind of bifurcate the two. One is a technology, the other one's being compliant with the regulatory bodies there. I mean, I think all of us pretty well understand that, PCI compliance is a real thing, and we all are compliant and always seek to continue to maintain our customer safety as well as our employee safety in our operations. But, you need to draw a line there between what is required from a regulatory standpoint and what is actually needed for technology and what's actually keeping our consumer data protections in place there. And I don't know that those are all the same.
Yeah, very good. Again, guys, thank you so much for your participation. Casey, welcome back. And thank you for bringing us all together as well.
Yes, thank you all for everybody who joined. If you had a question that didn't get answered during the session, please feel free to reach out to us at 365@conexxus.org. We'll connect you with the speakers today so that way they can answer your question privately. Thank you all for joining. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.